What's up, you beautiful chuds? Welcome to the Let's Talk Horror channel. Welcome to the Creepzone and welcome to Tales from the Creepzone. This is my side series where I'm going through every episode of every season of the Tales from the Crypt series. As I keep saying, I was going to go through this series all over again anyway, so why not bring you along on the journey? And what a journey it's been so far. I truly love Tales from the Crypt, as I have said in probably every episode. It is something that has been a big part of my history with horror. It is something that was instrumental to my obsession of horror as a kid, and it still obviously is that today. It is iconic, of course, it is absolutely iconic, and I absolutely love it. And I hope that so far you've been enjoying these episodes, these sort of almost breakdowns of every episode of how I feel about it. As I do keep saying as well, I have no idea like what other people think about the episode, so I don't know people's rankings or all that sort of stuff. So these reactions to the episodes of me going through it again and sharing with you what I think about the episode, per episode, by episode, whatever. They are my honest reactions to them, and it's interesting as well because, as I do keep saying, let me know in the comments if you're watching these videos. I want to know sort of what your favorite episodes are. Also, if there's episodes that I think are rubbish or good, I want to know whether you think the absolute opposite. I want to know. It's fun. That's the point of doing this. Is I'm doing it to have some fun talking about and a truly iconic series. But we start a new chapter today because we have now started season 3. So let's get into it. So season 3, episode 1 is Loved to Death. An aspiring screenwriter uses a mystical love potion to win over his superficial neighbour, triggering an obsessive infatuation that spirals out of control. This one's got Andrew McCarthy in it. Remember him? What happened to him? He's still around, I'm pretty sure, but he was like the hot thing in, what was he in? He was in something in Pink. Is it Pretty in Pink? Something like that. He was in Mannequin. He was in like the ones that he was like part of the Brat Pack of the 80s, I think, and then he's in this, but I don't really see him anymore, which is always a little bit of a shame because you know these actors that we got in the 80s, and I've spoken about this like a lot on the podcast and stuff. There's just something to them. They're always adding like little things with the character, the mannerisms, the way they say stuff, and it's so you know today like modern acting, so much of it is like being sort of like as normalized or as straight as you could sort of possibly can when you're delivering lines and stuff. There are, of course, character actors, but it almost felt like everybody was some form of character actor in the 80s and so on. So Andrew McCarthy was sort of one of them, and he shows in this episode because, of course, you know, as a performance-wise, he's good in it, you know, and the way that he, you know, does things and stuff, it does make you remember the people of the past that, you know, used to be around and then like aren't really around anymore. In this one, random boobs for no reason. Of course there is. You know, when you've got somebody that you know is you know women in it who unfortunately this is what happens. Unfortunately, people predominantly women were sexualized, and literally you can stand in a room doing your washing and then suddenly you've got to get your boobs out. It's a shame that this is what it was like. But there's some creepy undertone to this episode, and I just don't mean the creepy landlord guy, who's like the creep that's watching sort of everything, and of course he's the one that gives Andrew McCarthy this sort of love potion, so to speak. But there is like some sort of like weird, creepy, seedy sort of undertone to this one, and it's weird as well, like the shift in the aesthetical sort of dynamic of when you're in the sort of the apartment where they live, and the walls are all like dirty. It's very like grimy, grungy, dirty, all that sort of stuff. Like the walls are this really horrible, like it almost looks like an earwax color. It's gross. I don't know if it was a style choice. I hope not, but it was horrible. But then when you go into, you know, the landlord's apartment where he's got the TV screens and stuff like that, like it feels like a completely different environment. The coloring's different, like it's like the blue sort of lights. And so it's interesting to go from that to this, and I think it really sort of adds to this sort of like weird feeling that this episode gives me, this sort of like creepy undertone of sort of everything that's happening and stuff like that. um you have the woman in this that he sort of falls in love with at the start, because of course he falls in love with her. She doesn't want anything to do with him, rightly so, because he is a proper creep in this. He's like really, like, it's almost as if it's like he's trying to be like the cool pushy, or they're trying to depict it as in like this is how you sort of should be if you want to get the girl, but it doesn't work like that in this. Because she literally doesn't give a shit about him. She's already someone. She's already getting auditions and all that sort of stuff. And of course she's clearly a very strong woman in the episode. And she don't want bloody anything to do with him, and I like that. I like the fact that she's just like very sort of pushy, and she's just a little bit like, yeah, I haven't got time for you. Then he gets a bit creepy, and then she's like, yeah, you're a bit of a creep, so maybe, jog on. And also the fact that she turns around and basically says, look, it ain't gonna work. Essentially, until you're rich and famous, then essentially give me a call, which is always funny. There's a bit where he gets thrown out a door for being a perv, and he absolutely deserves it. But he flies out of the door, and I don't know whether it was Andrew McCarthy that was just like, I can be a stuntman on this, and then it went wrong, or whether it was a stuntman that was just like, I can do this, and then it'll make it look even better. But he goes flying out of a door, and then he goes so far, he goes right into a fire extinguisher that's on the wall. It looks like it bloody hurts. Hopefully, it was like a foam extinguisher or something like that. I don't know. But it was a good stunt, and if it was Andrew McCarthy who absolutely stacked it, then I suppose that's his fault for doing it. He should let the stuntman do it. So, and as I said, he does get this love potion. And what's so funny is that he basically, like, there's no thought about it, because of course you've got to think about runtime, and that's what they're thinking about. And they're thinking about how they keep making this move at a pace, obviously. They don't, he doesn't like question this love potion. It's like, here's this potion, and he clearly doesn't know what it's going to do. Like, he could put it in there, and this creepy landlord guy could have just given him like cyanide or something like that, and just put it and just told him, no, but it's a love potion. It's not poison whatsoever. But he just goes with it without questioning it, and the next thing he's got it, he gets given it. Next thing he puts it in her drink, not giving a shit, and he seems like, well, sort of happy about it, because he's just like, she's gonna bloody fall in love with me. But there's no like, oh, this can't be real, you know what I mean? And there's no like, oh, should I maybe not put this potion that could just be poison, and this guy could be an absolute mental, and he's just trying to kill everyone, and he's just trying to make me a murderer or whatever. I don't know, but there's no question it whatsoever. But once again, it's sort of, he doesn't question it, essentially because the episode has to happen, the story has to happen. So that's what they end up doing. They're just like, fuck all the rest of it, don't worry about him questioning it, just chuck it in. But it does make it a little bit funny. But yeah, straight in the glass. Also, I am, of course, on her side, because he is super creepy with the things that he's doing. And also, it, once again, because the episode has a runtime, everything really escalates really quickly. I think it escalates too quickly, because it goes from that she loves him, and then straight away to her being like an utter mess about how much she loves him. It's not like a gradual thing, because once again, it's all about time. It's all about, we've got to get from A, B to C, and we've only got X amount of time to do it. So yeah, so it goes from basically, them, her, but the potion working, she is in love with him, and then obviously it just goes absolutely wild from there. And as he puts it, after they've had, a game of sex a lot of times, clearly, he says he's all fucked out, which is a pretty funny quote. Also, don't hit women or anyone at that matter. Don't hit people. Which is obviously sadly what happens in the episode. The creepy landlord, he's really good in this. He's very, very good at being a bloody creepy bastard. Reminds me a little bit of Rutger Hauer, just obviously nowhere near as handsome. But there's this like, these sort of actors, they're the ability of how, they understand how vocally that's what they can do, and the way that he speaks, the way he's pronouncing things. He knows that he's a creepy son of a bitch with that voice, so he leans into that. So the landlord in this is really, really good. And then of course we get a super twisted ending. Also, one of the interesting things is, of course, recently we had the movie Obsession. I'm not going to go into it much, but do we think that Curry Barker maybe saw Obsession? Not saw Obsession. Maybe do we think that Curry Barker saw this episode of Tales from the Crypt and was just like, that'd be interesting? Like, or is it subconsciously? Has he even ever seen Tales from the Crypt? Who knows? But it is sort of, there are some moments in this where you're like, do you know what? Like, you've got the potion, maybe the One Wish Willow. You've got somebody who wants to, be loved and be desired by this person that he likes, and then of course it goes absolutely tits up for him, because of everything that happens, and we get this in Obsession. So is Love to Death? Is this the Obsession origins, or is that just absolute coincidence? I guess we never know unless Curry Barker comes out and just like, yeah, like I pretty much ripped it off. But it's a cool little thing to think about, even though it's probably absolutely not true. But overall, quite honestly, as an episode, I think it's pretty naff. Like, I don't really like this episode. I just don't. I think it's just, once again, like, as I keep saying, I do love my favorite episodes of Tales from the Crypt are ones that don't feel like they're episodes that are doing things for runtime. It feels like my favorite ones are the ones that feel organic, the ones that feel like they have a purpose and a point and a structure. And this one, of course, it has an idea, and it's a pretty, standard, idea, when it's like, you get given a potion for somebody to fall in love and it goes tits up. It's a tale as old as time, but it's just, and there are some fun moments in this and so on, but it just feels like an episode that you're like, there, that's it, there it is. So, but there are some good moments, there are some shit moments, there are things that don't make sense, but because it's runtime, they've got to do it. So I'm going to give this one two out of five, maybe 3 out of 5, but I'm going to stick at 2 out of 5. But it doesn't really matter when you get this low. I suppose it doesn't really matter too much, because already we know, well, that's not going to be my favorite episode of the season, because I'm only giving it 2 or 3. So I'm gonna stick with 2, but it may possibly be 3. There may be ones as we come to it later on in the series that are even way worse than this, and you're like, oh, okay, well then that bumps it up. That's what's interesting about doing this, because you watch some episodes and then you're like, yeah, that's not a very good episode, but then suddenly you're like, oh, hang on, the one before that was way worse, and then you drop it down and stuff. So it's super interesting, going back through it all again, and then as you go through them, you're like, that one's better than that, and so on. Anyway, let's get through to episode 2. So episode 2 is called Carrion Death. An escaped convict and a determined state trooper become physically shackled together in an unforgiving Arizona desert. I almost said dessert then. It's not dessert. It's a dead desert. The crypt keeper, dressed like a biker cop, is of course pure entertainment. Who doesn't bloody love that? When the crypt keeper, he does dress up quite a bit more in this season so far, I've noticed as well. And nearer the end of like season 2, they're like, let's dress this guy up. That's pretty damn funny, and they're like, let's do it. In this, we got Dale Cooper, played by Kyle MacLachlan. But he's not so nice in this one, because we know him as this, like, proper, almost like heroic, very charming, very nice, police officer. Dale Cooper, as I said, in Twin Peaks. Not Dale Cooper in this. He's not called Dale Cooper in this. Dale Cooper in Twin Peaks. But he feels vastly different in this, because, he's a piece of shit. And immediately, literally as soon as the episode opens, he's robbed somewhere and he just shoots somebody, and he's immediately killed someone, and he kills lots of people by the sound of it, because the gun's going off. And so in this, he literally is just a loose cannon, but very far from his character in Twin Peaks. And then it already like it hits the ground running this episode. Carl McLaughlin is shooting everyone and robbing banks or whatever he's doing. We get a really cool, I say really cool, we get a car chase scene, but it's a little bit abrupt. It doesn't necessarily go on as long as what you want it to, but at least it's there, because at the end of it as well, we do get an awesome explosion. So already we've got gunfire and explosions. So that's always absolutely bloody brilliant. Also, he said in the car he was rich. Basically, there's a funny bit where he's in the car and they're going through like or whatever, or when the explosion happens, something happens anyway. I think it's after the explosion, and then he talks about, he says like, it whatever anyway, I'm rich. The bag that he's holding is not riches at all. There's probably a few $1,000 in there, so he's not rich at all, unless it like having a couple thousand for him, and killing all these people is really worth it, and that makes him rich. I don't know, but yeah, whatever he's got in that bag is not riches whatsoever. So that made me laugh, because I'm like, you're not going to get really far on that much, mate. Also, one of the other things is that this episode seems to have like a lot of sort of voiceovers, ADR and stuff. Some of it sounds pretty bad, not necessarily in quality, but it just, like, a lot of the time you notice that sometimes it doesn't actually like sync up with the people that are talking, their lips and so on, or it doesn't really like, it just doesn't match the tone of what sort of is happening. So the ADR and the voiceover and stuff is pretty naff. Like, it's not so off-putting. Actually, it is quite off-putting sometimes. I was going to say it's not so off-putting, it's annoying. Sometimes it is a little bit, because you can tell they've just put it over rather than, obviously got him on set saying it and so on like that. But the problem with this episode is that after it has like the big moments, the it just gets boring. That's the problem. Like, it does, and then it does ramp up again, which is really good. But then you get the moments where it's just a little bit boring. And once again, it comes down to runtime. Like, what do you do in situations like this? Because you could just hit the ground running, and in an episode like this, for me, because your runtime isn't, an hour and a half, 2 hours, you could probably just hit the ground running and keep going. But in this one, it keeps on dipping out of those, like, of the moments, and then going back into it. So even though those moments throughout the episode are really, really good, because it's absolutely mental, and there's loads of like crazy stuff happening, it's the moments where basically nothing is happening at all, really, and then you're like, well, now I'm just bored, which is a little bit of a shame. That's until, though, obviously we do get a fight scene that's super funny, because the cop has a gun already. Basically, we already know that the cop has a gun, and because he tried to kill Cole McLaughlin. But when when they were driving, he was trying to shoot him and stuff, and they had the gun. But when they have the fight scene, we know that he's got a gun, and he's already literally trying to kill this person. Like, he's not doing the cop thing. Like, when they have the car chase, he's literally flat out trying to kill Dale Cooper. Why am I calling him Dale Cooper, Carl McLaughlin? Anyway, well, he's trying to kill him straight away. So he has no like regard of like what police do. Like, he's just like, I'm not going to try and like police maneuver car thing, pull him over, and then obviously he's a dangerous man, but he's not trying to bring him in. It doesn't seem like that. It feels like he's just trying to kill him. So when this fight scene happens, he just goes in there, and then they start fighting. But the cop's got a gun, so if he doesn't give a shit about him, why don't you just go in there and go bam, end of episode? But that's why, isn't it? Because otherwise it's the end of the episode. Once again, it's all about like the things that don't make sense, but they have to make sense for the episode, for it to actually be an episode and for it to work. But it did make me laugh, because I just thought to myself, imagine if he just goes in there, shoots him, end of episode, job done, heroic cop man. But he doesn't. But anyway, they have a crazy fight scene. But yeah, so we get the moments, and then it gets a little bit boring. But then it gets interesting again, because we don't expect him. There's a moment where you don't expect him basically to end up getting tied to the cop, and then of course the cop is dead, and then essentially we sort of get the Weekend at Bernie's sort of thing. Although, like, they're not tied to him, but he get like the Weekend at Bernie things where he's essentially got to carry this dead body around. And there's some funny moments where he's sort of spinning around in a circle, and the cop is, I say funny, it's not, well, it is funny, but he's going around in a circle, when he's trying to think about everything that's happening. And also the whole time I keep forgetting that there's like is it an eagle? I can't remember, something like that, a hawk or an eagle or something like that, is basically like almost following him the whole time, and he keeps on being like, piss off, stupid bloody bird, whatever it is. I can't remember what it is. And also the weird thing about him being tied to him is that once again it's like, because it has to happen for the episode, what happens in the episode. But the weird thing is that he's this, you know, they set it up on the reports, and the way that his character is that he's this really nasty, horrible murderer that's done these horrible things. He would just cut this cop's hand off, like it wouldn't be a problem to him. He would just cut his hand off, and then he's just like, even if he has to walk around, you know, whatever, with something attached to him, an arm and stuff, he's not going to be, you know, the person that's going to be like, I've got to carry this body absolutely bloody everywhere I go. No, that hand, that arm, whatever, is coming off if you are as bad as they say Carl McLaughlin's character in this is. So I don't really understand why he doesn't do that. But once again, as I said, it's because of the benefit of the story. Does it have to make sense? No, but it is what it is. Also, there is obviously, as we go on, you know, he's carrying the body up the cliff and so on like that, because he's trying to get to Mexico. He's trying to get, and he gets nearly there, but he stumbles, and there's a bit where he's hanging off the cliff, but he's got the handcuffs on, and then as he's hanging, it basically rips his hand off. That looks pretty gnarly. That's pretty cool. And also, it's one of those moments when you're like, oh, that would bloody hurt. You know what I mean? But yes, yeah, so the things. Oh, it's a vulture, isn't it? Not a bloody eagle. It's a vulture. Why can't I? Why did I think that it was an eagle and not a vulture? I've just remembered. But yeah, the vulture, you know, he gets, basically, he falls off the cliff. He's now got no hand. He can't move. And the vulture basically eats his eyes out. And you see it, and it's gnarly. Looks really cool. And Carl McLaughlin is absolutely dead. This episode's fun because it's fun to see Carl McLaughlin play basically a piece of shit, rather than a super charming, nice guy that he is in Twin Peaks, who does his job properly. In this, he royally fucks up, and he's a nasty, nasty person, but he plays it really well. So it's interesting to see, you know, an actor play two different types of characters and do them so well, even if sometimes the dialogue doesn't really work. Like, it's very cheesy, the dialogue in this. Sometimes the ADR and you know, the voiceover stuff is pretty crap. I'm going to give this 3 out of 5, which is obviously why, like I said before, the one before this almost became a 4, because there's some really gnarly things. So basically, doing the creepy cackles rating is sometimes difficult, because I hate rating things, because I think about it, and you, like I've already said, you're thinking about the episodes before and so on like this. And is there going to be anything better than this? Is there going to be a lot of stuff that's worse? More than likely, there are going to be a lot of episodes that are worse than this. So I'm going to give this 3 out of 5 at the moment, but quite honestly, I can see it becoming like a 4, dependent on what keeps on happening with the series. But once again, you know, I don't know. I mean, if this ends up being like the best one of the season, well, then it's not the greatest season, is it? Because, you know, I've had other seasons so far, season 1 and season 2, we've had 5 out of 5 creepy cackle episodes. This one isn't quite a 5 out of 5 creepy cackles, but I do think it's worthy of an absolute 3, maybe a 4. But let's move into episode 3. So episode 3 is The Trap. A lazy, abusive husband fakes his own murder with the help of his wife and his coroner brother to collect a massive life insurance payout. But the scam backfires when the wife and brother run off together and successfully, can't say words, frame him for his own murder. The episode, this one starts out, and quite honestly, I don't really give a shit. It's just, like, sometimes you almost get a sense of what the episodes are, what they're going to be, where they're going to go, when they sort of start. And you sort of, with me, like, that's how I feel, and I almost feel like I know what this episode is going to, like, how I'm going to feel about the episodes, because, you know, not all of them have ghost ghouls and goblins and so on like that, and this one is one of the ones that doesn't. It's not like a supernatural episode. But I don't really like this one, and of course, you know, you don't really like, you know, Lou, the husband, is, of course, you know, he's an absolute douchebag as well, so that's not good. This one, they sort of like lean heavily into some of the comedy stuff as well. Like, they try and have like the serious moments, but of course it leans quite heavily into you know, to the comedy sort of side of it as well. And also, for some reason, I don't know if it's a budget thing or whatever, but the episode looks mostly like cheap as shit. But also, this season so far, I know we're only 3 episodes in, but every episode there's a different aesthetical look and tone visually to what I've seen so far in season 3, and I noticed it like in sort of every episode, where it just there's something that looks different about it, and I can't really put my finger on what it is so far. Maybe by the end of the season I will, unless they change, who the showrunner is or the DP and all that sort of stuff, which they could have done. I don't know, but this episode, and once again, it could be the fact like the version that they've managed to get and put on Shudder, but this does look like shit for some reason. This one, and it doesn't particularly like feel like it's filmed well. It feels very TV visuals, the way that, especially back in like the 80s and 90s, the way that TV programs looked was very different to movies. And one of the things that Tales from the Crypt did very well is, or has done very well in a lot of episodes, is almost bridge the gap between what is a TV show or what looks like a TV show, but also make it very cinematic. Like they got actual decent directors to make episodes for the show who are film directors, and then they just go, well, I'm just going to do that, but then make a TV episode, a shorter runtime than a movie. And then some of the episodes you get that look like, proper like TV episodes. And I think that maybe that's what it is. So far everything has sort of felt like made for TV rather than, these almost directors coming in that make movies, and then they look like movies because of it. I don't know, but this episode, yeah, I'm talking so much about the visually. Who gives a shit? It looks like shit. Simple so far. Anyway, and it just looks cheap. Quite honestly, it's pretty obvious what's going to happen in this episode. Mr. Strickland from Back to the Future is in this. He's a cop. He's not a headmaster or anything like that, but we're more on Back to the Future later, because you get a bloody biggest surprise you're ever going to get in this episode. But how the absolute shit does anyone not know he's alive? Basically, as I said, he fakes his death, but they go through all the stages. Like, he gets a funeral, the police turn up, Strickland's one of the cops, he turns up, and somehow no one knows that this guy is alive at all. Like, he's just dead, even though he literally is not dead. And I don't know, it's one of those things where it just makes it like a little bit too far-fetched, where it's like almost trying to be funny about it, but I don't know, things like that annoy me, not just in this but in general, because you're just like, well, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever, because they, like, it's not as if other people don't interact with this body, like the brother can't do absolutely everything. So people are going to see that this guy is definitely not dead, and the fact that he obviously, he's taking all this time, or however time it's taken in the episode, and he's still just lying around going, I'm dead because I'm trying to do this scam and stuff. I don't know, it just doesn't work. It seems a bit too silly, a little bit too far-fetched. So then more stuff happens. That's pretty much it in this episode, and honestly, I just don't really care about it. And then suddenly, a very recognizable voice, someone that is connected to Principal Strickland, happens. A very recognizable voice that straight away you know who this is. And of course it can't be coincidence, right? Because it is one of the greatest, one of the coolest people that has ever lived on planet Earth, or to be fair, in the universe. If there's aliens out there, they're just like, yeah, this is the coolest guy, Michael J. Fox. That's right. The Marty McFly himself is in this episode. I didn't know whether it was just going to be like, they do a voiceover or stuff and it's just a stand-in, and it sort of, it sets out that it is going to be like that. But then suddenly you see him, and then you're like, yes, now it's the greatest episode that's ever happened, because the one of the greatest people that has ever lived, a true icon, Michael J. Fox. I love the guy, and he's been a huge inspiration for me, to try and be the coolest fuck that's ever lived. Michael J. Fox does it. I'm gonna bloody try it as well. I love the guy, but it was cool to have him in it. But it's a shame that he is in this episode. Like him, I just think to myself, how incredible would it have been to have Michael J. Fox in, one of the episodes that's just you know, truly iconic. This for me isn't really an iconic episode. And in this episode, we do also get another electric chair death. That's right, another you know, person gets electrocuted by to death in a chair. Tales from the Crypt bloody loves doing this, don't they? So, you know, keeps happening, and I'm sure it'll keep happening as well. But yeah, this episode for me, I just sat there and I was just like, whatever. Which is why when it comes to creepy cackles, it gets 5 out of 5 creepy cackles. Why does it get 5 out of 5 creepy cackles? Because it's not a very good episode. It gets 5 out of 5 creepy cackles because it has Michael J. Fox in it. Simple as that. When it comes to doing my rankings, no, I will not put this in there as my favorite episode of the season, even though it's getting 5 out of 5 creepy cackles. If you're going for the episode itself, it's getting 1 or 2, but it gets jumped up by X amount, however many it needs to get to 5, because Michael J. Fox is in it, and that is all that matters. So there we go. That is 3 more episodes. The first 3 episodes of season 3 of Tales from the Crypt, and you know, I keep enjoying the journey. The thing with this series is that even on the episodes that are shit, you still enjoy it. Somehow you still enjoy it, and I, of course, I'm enjoying the journey. I hope that you are too. So keep sticking with me as we continue to go through season 3 and then onwards until there's no more, and I ride off into the sunset where I don't do this anymore. But there we go. But until next time, stay creepy, fuckers.